Hello everybody and welcome to the continuation of the Battletech meta. And after all the Mech Warrior brilliance and then the very, very chaotic Arsenal release with lots of U-turns and backtracks and decisions and other things, one of the things that Wizards of the Coast did after all of that was they tried to keep the Battletech faithful happy. The Battletech faithful has always been a bit of a quirky thing. Although I haven't done Worlds 98 yet, they were very annoyed with Terry Borer. If you watch the video, I might even pull it out when we do it. But Terry said about having a magic ruling and then doing it literally, and then he did it at Battletech, and everybody hated that. Everyone hated that because that was Wizards being Wizards, and one of the things that people liked about Battletech is that you couldn't counterspell the counterspell that had been counterspelled on my interrupt to do something else, and you could just put your monster on the table kind of thing, or shoot the fireball. Battletech at the time was very much a you have your best slug, and then it's my go, and I'll have my best go, which befits the mech meta. So after all of the disdain and the Wizards of the Coast don't know what they're doing, they tried to prove that they did know what they were doing, and they held a competition. And the competition was called the R&D Challenge. And in this case, the faithful Battletech players were invited to come along to the Wizards of the Coast Centre and play a tournament against or with Wizards of the Coast arse kickers, as they called themselves. Or was it was it elite arse kickers? I'm going to try and find the phrase now. Our elite staff of arse kickers is the phrase they used, and unfortunately, only one of their elite arse kickers got to the final, and that was a bodge job. They rigged it. Okay, they rigged the final round pairings so that Charlie Cantino, playing for Wizards of the Coast, one of the Wizards of the Coast player, who should have played one of the top players who made the top four, didn't, because he was Swiss. So he didn't play against somebody he should have done, and basically they put him against one of the Wizards of the Coast players who conveniently lost to allow him to win 2-0 and go through to the finals. So otherwise it would have been full of normal people, and Wizards of the Coast would have walked away with their tails between their legs, with their elite set of arse kickers and game designers being absolutely trounced by the players. And let's face it, the players know what they're doing, the designers don't in this case. And it's alright designing a game, but you've still got to play it. And what you think you've designed doesn't play the way you think you play it. Okay, lots of examples of that at the moment. Even if you can't remember which card it is and the one you've designed and how does that work? I can't remember. So, what I'm going to do as a pre-1998 finals, I'm going to do some more meta stuff, and that's the whole point of the stream. I'll do the UK stuff as well, and my deck and everything else. But this is kind of interesting because this shows you where the meta was pre-Worlds, after the Arsenal mess. I was going to say the car crash of Arsenal, but it's more like the helicopter meets the tank of Arsenal. So we are going to start with the 4th place deck, and the 4th place deck may surprise you because 4th place was taken by Peter Sundholm, the first ever world champion, at this point the current world champion still, and this is the deck that he ran, and this is quite interesting. So he started off with the wonderful Mr. Spanky, 6 Dasher Primes, and if you look at his World's first deck, he only had 5. In Second Worlds, he had the 6. There they are. Okay, next up we have Fenris B. oops, sorry, Fenris B, Fenris Prime. Yeah, we've talked about this unit. We know it's a good unit. We know the buyouts work, etc., etc. And then from the Mech Warrior set, as expected, we have Phantom B, 6 of those, and we have Phantom A, 6 of those, because that's the 4 cost unit, the 4 damage unit. That's the one that makes the magic 7. Okay, so those are 18 dash units and 6 Fenris Bs. And then, and this is the interesting bit, from the original World Champion deck, he keeps Fenris B. He plays 3 Fenris Bs. Okay, again, they're 4 attack, durable, fast. They don't dash, but the 4 attack makes a lot of difference. Okay, the missions, as you may learn to expected, 3 superior navs and 3 pushing the envelopes. It's like these were the only missions in his collection. Oh, apart from a couple of good shootings from the first World Championship. Okay, and then, and this makes it into World as well, 1 Arrow 4 battery, and this is in there to deal with the wonderful black market connections and any other 1 structure items it's good to deal damage to. It might even get hit in on a Solaris contracts if you're lucky, but that MFer, shall we say, is way too tough a nut to crack. And then the resource mix, and again, this is kind of interesting. There were 10 assemblies. Oops, I got rid of that, and I really shouldn't have done that. There were 5 munitions. Oops. And 5 tactics. It's quite an interesting mix-up here. And then our wonderful war funds from Arsenal. There were 4 of those. And 2 black market connections. And there's the deck. So the interesting thing, obviously, assembly first, 10 seems quite high. Munitions and tactics second. I think he's hoping to get 1 and pay 4 for Fenris Prime, or possibly a Fenris B, because they only require assembly, and then everything else is AMT. And then there's 4 war funds in there to draw whichever one you don't get. Which seems reasonably reliable. Whether this should be 8 assembly and 6 of the others, I don't know, or whether it should be somewhere in between 9 assembly, 6 tactics, maybe. But you can, if you know the World Championship deck that takes place 6 months later, 3 months later, whatever else it is, this changes quite drastically. Or the fundamentals are still there, but the variables get mixed up quite drastically. The Fenris Bs go, a couple of the assemblies go, a pushing the envelope goes, and he plays 5 Trial of Gods in order to speed up the deck, because this is not fast enough. It's still the same deck that has effectively won the first Worlds. It's a Wolf Hunter deck. And if we go into the, let's go for the view mode, and let's zoom in here a bit more so you can see the whole thing. The resource mix, the same 6 missions, 3 pushing the envelopes, 3 superior navs in there. The war funds gives it variety, and then you've got your dashing phantoms with 3 and 4 damage, and the normal Fenris is at 3 and 4 damage. So there's some good resource killing potentials there at all. As I said, an Arrow 4 battery to deal with things. Okay. No think tank. No think tank at all. So that was his deck. And let's have a look at the sideboard whilst we're here. The sideboard, no surprises here in, as you may have guessed, Heavy Fog but only 3 this time, and another Arrow 4 battery, and then the creative terraforming is there. Even though he doesn't play with a terrain himself, he packs for the fact that somebody may well do 2 creative terraforming and 2 single combat. And again, the single combat is possibly Phantom A, Fenris B food. Fenris B comes out and you can attack, use it. Well, you can use single combat straight away on it, which I think is wrong. Phantom A comes out, it dashes, you can attack with it, and then whilst it's tapped, you could use single combat on it to kill something else. It's a very abusive, very wrong card in the way it was implemented. And that's the only reason it's there, to allow you to deal with those fast units. Mongoose is an example, or the Odd Spectre. Let's face it, the Inner Sphere fasts don't deal a great deal of damage, so you can probably take on a single combat 1-on-1 without too many problems, and you know, ping the armour and maybe take a structure, but finish it off quite nicely. And if you're killing your opponent's fast units that way, then it's a very effective tool. Very effective tool. So, you know, the heavy fog, as we've discussed before, anti-swarm, basically, type thing. Single combat to deal with units that are going to be problematic and get in the way. Creative terraforming to get rid of rocky gorges or civilian settlements, or possibly fog-shrouded moors if your opponent puts that on their stockpile. And remember, at this point, Mechless was there; it could be played. So again, that's kind of a nasty. And then Arrow 4 just hops in there. The interesting thing with creative is he's prepared to pay 5 for it without a think tank in the deck. Maybe that's a little weak. Maybe drop an assembly. If you're going to play this straight away, maybe drop an assembly for a think tank so that you can scrap that for your creative terraforming. Obviously, when he includes Trial of God later, then that's different. But it does force you to combo those two, or pay the costs on creative terraforming. I think my problem with creative terraforming is that it's very easy for Inner Sphere to play a couple of politics, an outreach mercenary training, or a tactics here and there, because they primarily have an A and T mix, or an L and T mix, for example. Whereas Clan, then you're stuck with AMT, unless you're playing something like a Dragonfly Elemental deck where you're playing A and L, and everything jumps, and you're probably playing a couple of tactics, but you might play a couple of think tanks knowing that I can scrap one for tactics, but I can scrap the other for politics and avoid the buyout on creative terraforming. So I feel that creative terraforming favours the Inner Sphere. It is much easier for them to play it. I think if this was 1 2p, or even 2 2p, maybe 2 1p or something or other, it would be a lot more palatable. It would be a lot more playable. Clan would actually be able to play it in a reasonable comfort, whereas it is awkward for them and much easier for Inner Sphere type decks. So that's the deck. That's what Peter played. He came 4th, okay, which is not a bad showing. But then we have to look at the other decks, and that's the point of the next 2 or 3 videos, which I'm going to let you in a secret. I'm actually going to record this now, but I'm probably going to release them as individual chunks. So, on that note, there's Peter Sundholm's deck from the R&D challenge, and like it, love it. The interesting thing for me is how this evolved for Worlds later. But we're going to come on to that. So, in the meantime, I will say thank you for listening. This one's been short and sweet, just like the best. the best fruit, shall we say. And in the meantime, I hope you look after yourself and take care, because it's a big bad world out there. And I will see you shortly, i.e. in a few minutes when I record the next one, having had a comfort break, for the third place deck. And I wonder who that could be.